Hey guys, before we start, let me just say that I am just some nerd on the internet, and this is purely my opinion on an anime, so please don't take my opinion as law. I'm just making this review to purely air my opinion on the show, and hopefully help it improve if and when there's a season 2. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello, I'm your badass and nerdy host, Grifflepuff. No, this isn't a versus video. Believe it or not, I can do other content. And also, I'm having technical issues with Ronald vs. Spears, so, I had time to do another project. Definitely not procrastinating or anything. Anyway, I'm sure you've all heard about Crunchyroll's new show. Well, it's not that new as of this video, but yeah, Crunchyroll's homemade anime series, High Guardian Spice. If you have heard of it, then you've probably seen all the people roasting the shit out of it on YouTube. And if you haven't, welcome to YouTube. I'm honored to be the first video you've ever clicked on. Well, regardless of being your first time on YouTube or not, it was all of these High Guardian shitpost videos that inspired me to actually watch the show, so I could form an opinion of my own. Instead of just hopping onto a blind hate wagon. As fun as the hate wagons can be sometimes, I figured I'd walk the path of a High Guardian and form my own opinion. So what is High Guardian Spice? Well, High Guardian Spice is an anime following Rosemary, which is not a spice by the way, that's an herb, as she goes through a school to become a High Guardian alongside her best friend and I can only assume girlfriend, Sage, which is also an herb and not a spice. Weird.
So what does it say?
He just said it's not literal.
I was just...
Hey, come on in. All right, class, please welcome Aster Tourmaline. Hey.
Hi!
Oh, alright then, I guess they're just really close friends. Man, it really felt like the whole show was setting them up to be a couple, but I guess now I consider my hard read a fail, I guess. Man, I'm usually really good at this stuff. I called Mako and Ryuko being a couple by the end of Kill la Kill just on episode 1 alone.
Could you maybe have a crush on Rosemary?
What?
Just consider it. You talk about her a lot.
Oh, or maybe they are? You know what, I'm kind of lost on that front, honestly, but whatever. Anyway, along the adventure, they meet and very quickly team up with Parsley the Dwarf, which again is not a frickin' spice. That's that green shit they put on my pasta at Italian places. I'm not a fan of parsley, if you couldn't tell. Characters, actually. I like the character a lot. I don't like the actual, parsley, but I'm getting off track, aren't I? Oh, and there's also time. And real quick tangent, I had to physically stop myself from saying, thanks for the tip, every single time they said her name. Yeah, comedy's dead, I have an issue, and Death Battle has corrupted me. What's your point? Anyway, Time is a bitter elven character, and she's also the archer of the group, yada yada yada. I should also mention that Time is also not a damn spice, but hey, I guess High Guardian Herb maybe would have suggested something else.
Jinkies!
So I guess touche on that one. Also, if you're wondering why I put Jinkies instead of Zoink Scoob or Ruh-Roh Raggy, the only audio I could find of either of those lines on YouTube was bass boosted to hell and back, so thank you, very cool YouTube, very cool. But yeah, as you may have guessed, High Guardian Spice is your basic My Hero, Ruby, Little Witch, Sky High, Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, Assassination Classroom, kind of Danganronpa if you want to stretch it, Soul Eater type of show, where a bunch of characters, in this case a group of girls, go to a school to become bona fide badasses. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and start the review of the series now. And look, I'm not going to go episode by episode because my name isn't Doug Walker, but instead I'm going to review the whole series just in one go, or rather I'm just going to spill my thoughts on the entire series into this video, while touching on specific episodes and moments as I need to. Basically think of it as word vomit with my gorgeous voice, and this pretty decent editing, while I talk about this show. To keep myself organized though, I did kind of break this review into 3 parts to the best of my ability. The first 2 make sense, the last part's just me airing most of my opinion on the show. But without further ado, let's move on to part 1, the design. So, let's start by talking about the lead, Rosemary. First off, I think she actually has a pretty cute design, actually. As a matter of fact, all the relevant characters have very good designs. And while I actually like the art style of the show, I don't think it really works if we want to call the show an anime. It looks more like the concept art for a show like Star Vs. Or Steven Universe, and if we want to be completely fair, anime is animation from Japan, so High Guardian Spice by definition cannot be anime. Sorry for the pompous nerd voice there, I just really had to sell this point here. Technically speaking, anime is animation from Japan, so if we make it quote-unquote anime and it's not from Japan, it can't technically be anime, so I guess the style gets a pass there. Regardless of style, each relevant character actually stands out and can be picked out of a crowd, which is something a lot of shows struggle to do, especially anime. I mean, hell, my dad can't tell the difference between Gohan, Goku, Vegeta, Trunks, and any other Saiyan, especially when they go Super Saiyan. So mad props to the show for that one. God, when I played Dragon Ball FighterZ with him once and he called every character Goku, even the ones that obviously weren't Goku, you know, like Frieza. Anyway, while each character has that kind of cow art style to them that makes their faces look similar to one another, each character can easily be told apart and read as to who and what they are. Sage is clearly a caster, as evident by her staff, her witch hat, her smaller, less built features, and just overall her more witch-like appearance. Time is tall and has elven features, alongside wearing green, easily showing her as the obvious archer or ranger of the group, and Parsley is short and tomboyish, which fits well with her dwarven blacksmith background and complements her more muscular build, showing her as definitely the strongest physically when it comes to the group. And then there's Rosemary. Yes, I said she stood out easily, and hey, I even praised that, because silhouettes are important in art, especially in animation if you want your character to be memorable. I mean, just look at Goku's hair, for example. That is a memorable head of hair. But look at Rosemary again for a moment. Big pink, bright hair, an extra poofy dress that looks straight out of a Disney princess's wardrobe, and arms as scrawny as her wizard friend. I bet you can't guess what Rosemary's role in the party is. Yeah, Rosemary's supposed to be the overly reckless swordsman. Now don't get me wrong, the style of cutesy girl badass who's built like a Disney princess can work, but here it just doesn't. And I think the best way to show where Rosemary fails in design is to put her up against the reboot She-Ra design. Then now look, all of you who don't like reboots, please hold your booing until the end of the video, as this is just the best comparison I could make thanks to the similar art styles and also demonstrating my point actually pretty perfectly. Thank you. Look, She-Ra is skinny. She's not very well built in terms of being a physical fighter. And she also has big, bright hair, just like Rosemary. The difference is she's in full armor and is fit to be a fighter. Maybe this is just the D&D nerd in me, but any class that's gonna be throwing hands should be dressed to get stabbed. Definitely not like some sort of sailor scout. The only exceptions of this that come to mind are big, meaty barbarians, which Rosemary is not, or martial arts masters, which again, she demonstrates in the show she is clearly not. And just to get rid of this argument now, Parsley gets a pass on the whole armor thing since she shows traits of being tougher than the others by a country mile, putting her in a pseudo-barbarian kind of role for the team. But again, I do generally like the actual design of each character, even Rosemary, even though I think it falls flat in some aspects. I just actually do like the designs. So now let's go ahead and talk about the setting of the show and how it's designed. And well, I think the backdrops and the environments are actually done pretty well. They're pretty superb if you ask me. They use a classic medieval world with some modern twists to it, kind of like London, or Ruby with a bit more medieval castles and stuff. But I'd regret it if I didn't point out something. There's a literal stock image with watermark visible that appears in episode 1. I don't know how you screw up that poorly, but yeah. Oh, and don't even get me started on the fact that they straight up use the Pokeball opening noise from the anime and the games that gets played in a couple later episodes. I would show that part off, but I tried to screen record the footage off Crunchyroll to demonstrate some of my points, and when I went to play it back to make sure it actually worked, all of the footage was blacked out except for the ads. Thank you, Crunchyroll. Very cool. Well, visually speaking, the show is above average most of the time, and it even has a few really standout shots, particularly during combat. Honestly, the show does look good, especially for a season 1 of a streaming service original show. I have seen other shows that look much rougher in season 1, so I can't be too hard on it, especially since I actually do enjoy the artwork. Specifically this shot right here, I don't know what it is, but this shot made me stop this shot right here made me actually solidify Rosemary's kind of a badass. Anyway, we're moving on to part 2, the characters. So now let's talk about the characters, and for this I'll be sticking with the main 4. But I will be mentioning some of the side characters later, being Amaryllis and Snapdragon, which, for the record, Amaryllis is just a normal human name, so that one gets a pass. But Snapdragon is a flower. They're not even trying anymore. Like, I guess maybe, like, herbs are at least spice adjacent. Maybe you can push Snapdragon. I don't know. I feel like they are really far off from the point of the show being called High Guardian Spice at this point. Anyway, so if you were to just watch episode 1, or even just the first 3 or 4 episodes, you may think the characters are actually really one-dimensional, which is actually completely accurate, since they are cartoons and thus only have one dimension to them. However, you also wouldn't be wrong from the character perspective of things either. Rosemary is the kind of annoying, reckless type, Sage is just anxiety in human form, Time is the average I hate everyone and everything character, and Parsley is the kind of glue that keeps the team together via acting as a pseudo-leader. When not on missions, that is. And for a few episodes, that's literally all they are. Which actually sounds kind of familiar? Why does that sound so... Hey, wait a minute. However, as the show continues, the characters actually get explored a lot better, and you can start to relate to them in some way or another. And before anyone says anything, let me finish my thought, please. Look, a lot of people could say that these plot lines for each of the leads, dealing with their families wanting them to follow certain paths and them going against it, to be very cliche and overdone plot lines. And you'd be completely right, I'm not even going to disagree with you. But they are used as a setup for more important scenes, such as Parsley taking time to stay with her family during the break because Time doesn't want to spend time with her mom due to family drama that I don't want to get into because it's... I don't want to spoil the whole show for you. Or what might be the biggest scene in terms of character development, the memory chase scene. As a quick rundown of why this scene even happened, Rosemary and Sage get into a big fight during the Halloween festival because they couldn't agree on activities, and Rosemary calls Sage boring, Sage calls Rosemary, annoying, yada yada yada, basic BFF fight plot, and then for the next few episodes, Sage starts hanging out with Snapdragon, who we'll discuss a bit more later with his own little segment. And Rosemary and Amaryllis obviously get jealous because Rosemary's now lost her best friend, possibly girlfriend, I'm still not clear on that front, and Amaryllis has lost her best friend, and now they're hanging out with each other, and it's just a big mess. So Amaryllis, being the obvious bully character, comes up with a plot to break them up by making them see each other's most embarrassing memories. Rosemary second guesses the plan last second, funny memory catching scene ensues, and eventually Sage sees one of Rosemary's memories of her crying because her mom Lavender left on a mission and has been missing for years. Also, lavender is not a spice, it is a flower, or a soap, or a deodorant, or a Febreze can, but it's not a spice. Now, I likely explained the scene incredibly poorly, and honestly, what else is new? However, it's probably one of the best scenes when it comes to making these characters feel real, and it's because of scenes like this in the second half of the season that actually made me start enjoying these characters rather than just accept that these were the one-note main characters we were going to follow. Unlike other shows. Oh hey look, another Ruby comparison. Combine these big moments with smaller characterization moments like Rosemary actually hesitating to continue her fight with the evil cat girl Olive? Okay, well now, they're just not even trying. Olives aren't spices, they're not herbs, they're just food. You put them on salads, people take them out of salads because they're gross. Honestly, they don't even order a salad at that point, it's just, olives are gross, salads are gross. That's my point. Anyway, she actually hesitates to fight Olive after she cuts her really badly, and there's other moments, like when that time that Parsley risked her life to save a cat, or there's just so many more, but I don't want to keep going because I don't want to spoil the whole show for you, and I do want this review to have an end at some point. So, what's the ultimate takeaway from this segment? Well, High Guardian Spice is kind of like a Shark Tank pitch. It fails to make the main cast into anything I could get invested into until about halfway through the season, when they start to tackle, character things, rather than just world building and setting up the plot for 6 episodes. So just like a pitch in Shark Tank that starts by, meaningless bullshit that nobody actually listens to until the sharks hear numbers and they viciously invest, and this was a bad analogy. This was a very poor choice in analogy. Don't ever let me do this again. This is what happens when you spend 3 weeks doing nothing but trying to learn how to speedrun Minecraft and watching terrible Shark Tank reruns on YouTube. God, that is the most boring thing I've ever said. Someone help me. Look, the point is, we're just going to move on to the last part of the review, and it's by far the broadest part of the review. Allow me to present Part 3, the good, the bad, and my final thoughts. So with the basic stuff out of the way, let's talk about what High Guardian Spice does good and what it does poorly. And for the sake of ending on a very high note, we're actually going to tackle the show's shortcomings first. So for starters, the show drags on for its first 5 or so episodes, and I'm aware I've made this point several times throughout the video. However, while this can be excused somewhat by the show being brand new and thus needing time to set up its world and its characters, and being done by a new crew, it doesn't excuse how long this baby steps period takes. It's half the series as of me writing this. Most shows, including anime, don't take nearly as long to get into the world. For example, the original Dragon Ball series sets it up its main cast and, world and everything within a single episode, maybe 2 or 3 if you want to count them getting up to Master Roshi as, still setting everything up. But that's the thing, that's all it takes. And yeah, it adds on new cast members and things as the show goes on, but it's not all centralized to the first half of the series. Now, is it fair to compare this to Dragon Ball? Yeah, I think so. This is an anime made decades later with years of time put into planning it out and done by a big corporation, so I don't feel the comparison is that outlandish. But fine, if you want a better example or another example to use, there's Tome, a YouTube animated series that is done by only a few people that explains its concepts and similarly big cast within 2-ish episodes. So realistically, there is an excuse for this long baby steps phase that the show takes. Also, side note, if y'all like this review enough, maybe I'll do a review of Tome in the future. It's a show I love, and I'd love an excuse to rewatch the show. So yeah, let me know in the comments. Anyway, that being said, while the first part of the show does drag on quite a bit, there are a few parts here and there that I found legitimately funny, and rather entertaining, such as this scene here that always makes me laugh.
Hold on, you got mugged on your first day?
I'm sorry, is there a better time to get mugged? That's right, keep walking.
You almost chop off a person's head one time, and it's like,
I was sure I was gonna have to fight her to defend your honor.
my hero.
But you see, those scenes aren't nearly common enough to make the slower parts of this show bearable. It is quite the drag to sit through the first half of the series. But hey, that's enough griping about the first half of the show. There's a few other topics we need to cover, such as the theme song and how it's really, really atrociously bad. Look, I don't want to hold on this part for too long because music's obviously very subjective, but I hate this show's intro a lot. Outro I've actually kind of grown to like a little bit, but the intro is really terrible. But yeah, music is very subjective though, so I don't want to hold on this forever, and if you want a reason to completely ditch my musical taste and credibility in that aspect, I listen to Ring-a-Ding when I play Smash Bros. On Final Destination, and I've been listening to the same couple of artists, specifically the same couple of songs by those artists, since I was in middle school. My music change has not evolved. I have the musical taste of a 5-year-old, apparently. But whatever. Anyway, I've saved the biggest problem for last, but before we move on to this next part, I just want to play this one clip because it's really funny, especially out of context, and this next section isn't going to have any jokes because we're talking about something a little more serious that I don't want to make jokes during just because I don't want to offend anyone. So here, just laugh at this clip, and then we'll go for a no laugh for just a little bit, and then we'll go back to the laughs.
You guys should have seen this girl.
Go away.
You probably thought she's just a regular girl, nothing to notice, but Rhubarb's like really good at this stuff.
Do not call me that.
Oh, right. Rose Barb's strength today showed me that I have a lot to learn about myself and how girls look cute when they climb walls and stuff.
It's been fun, Aster, but... yeah.
Should have known you were stuck up.
Wow, son, we need to have a word.
Anyway, the last problem in the show that we're going to be tackling is a scene regarding a transgender character. But before we can go any further, I just need to say this. I fully support the LGBTQ community, and I am all for equal rights for everyone. I believe you should love who you love, and you should be who you are. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the show's portrayal of LGBTQ people, because I want to get some context for how the show has tackled these characters so far before we discuss the one scene that I am mainly trying to talk about. And believe it or not, our journey actually starts on the first episode when we're introduced to some of Sage's family members that she'll be staying with, being a niece and her elven wife, Aloy. They're not in the show all that often, so their names don't get said too often, so I don't remember their exact familiar relation to Sage, let alone how to pronounce the wife's name. But hey, the show actually does a pretty decent job with, showing them as a perfectly normal and healthy couple. Nobody in the show ever mentions it, and they're treated by the show and in universe by other characters as a normal part of society, which is fantastic. The same can't be said about the next time the show tackles an LGBTQ character. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with Professor Caraway the character. I actually think he's a very well-written and well-portrayed character. And hell, despite being a transgender man, he is treated like a normal part of society within the show. So again, I applaud the show for that. But the scene where it's revealed where he's transgender feels a little forced and out of nowhere. Let me just play the clip and then I'll explain a bit further.
Lavender and I met when we were students here together, our first year. We were a lot like you and your friend Sage, actually.
What? How?
Totally inseparable. This was our first everything hours, dorks.
Mom looked so fierce in the uniform. Is that your sister?
It's me, actually.
You are a girl?
I'm transgender.
I don't know that word.
I was born into a female body, but it wasn't the right body for me. So I used new magic to change it.
Cool. You can do that? Is that kind of transformation magic permanent?
I take a potion once a month to keep the spell active, which lets me be the real me.
Oh, I'd give anything to know where she is right now.
I know. Me too.
Okay, so that scene felt a little forced, right? It feels like they had a scene planned out for Caraway to have some sort of history with Rosemary's mom, and then they decided to make him transgender for the sake of diversity. Now, we learn later that's obviously not the case, and I'll cover the scene that I'm talking about right there here in just a moment, but it just feels forced. It's hard to put into words how awkward the scene is, especially when in the context of the episode there wasn't really a need for him to reveal that to Rosemary. As a matter of fact, there was a much better time that they could have revealed this, which leads me into what the show did very well. During a two-part Halloween Festival episode, we see Amaryllis walking around dressed as a pirate captain alongside Snapdragon dressed as a mermaid. Up until this point, we had really only seen Snapdragon bully Rosemary a little bit and have an implied crush on stage, and, act as a lackey to Amaryllis. So upon watching the episode, I just assumed the mermaid outfit was just kind of meant to be a gag, something along the lines of Amaryllis made him wear it or whatever because she was the pirate captain and she needed someone to go with her in a second costume or whatever. However, one of Snapdragon's friends ends up hitting on him by accident due to the costume and then freaks out and calls him weird and a freak and all this kind of stuff. And obviously this would have been the easy punchline to make with the whole mermaid gag. But that's the thing, it wasn't a gag. We see Snapdragon is actually hurt by this and upset at this whole scenario. We find out later after an uncharacteristic physical confrontation that Snapdragon doesn't feel like himself in his body, to which Professor Caraway helps him through his feelings, having gone through the same thing when he was younger. Honestly, this scene probably would have been a better time for us to learn Caraway is transgender, and it likely would have only aided in making this scene feel more impactful. All that being said though, the issues I had with the scene where Caraway tells Rosemary that he's transgender are not present in this scene with Snapdragon, and I commend the show for that, for fixing these issues that they had in the last scene. Honestly, the show actually fixes all of my issues I had with the first half by the second half of the show. The show's pacing picks up as the girls start going on adventures and doing dungeon-based assignments, and actual villains start to show their faces. Their cat-like face. Hey guys, why was the bad guy of the show a cat girl? Are they just trying to make people horny? Cause it's November, that ain't cool, man. On top of that, the show actually starts showing us why the girls are good enough to be guardians in training, through numerous fights in the latter half of the show that demonstrate not only fantastic choreography, but also setting itself apart from other animes, with minor wounds being dangerous to the heroes and villains alike. It's really strange to think about. I went into this show with the impression that it was going to be awful. Mainly thanks to all the panning I saw online and the constant shit posts and just everything. But upon watching it, I found a show that had a very rough start, yeah, but it picked up and became a show I actually wanted to watch another episode of by the second half. Kinda like Space Jam 2, except that movie's a masterpiece of the entire runtime, so I guess it's a little bit different. Look, I just want an excuse to bring up Space Jam 2, I love that movie. But yeah, High Guardian Spice is very, very slow and tedious to sit through for the first half, which was most certainly not helped by the fact that I had to watch the show without a premium membership on Crunchyroll, so every episode had an ad before it started, followed by 3 ad breaks of 4 to 5 ads each. Oh boy, please end my suffering. If I had to see another SMT5 ad that's in Japanese, or another mobile game ad that has the worst grammar ever, I will jump out a window and off a cliff. But that being said, the second half of the show was legitimately good and does a much better job showing out the show's potential, and I will definitely be watching Season 2 if and when it ever comes out. And I've always made jokes about people who say things like, oh, this RPG is super slow for the first 100 hours, then it gets really good. Or man, once you get past Season 1 of this show, it gets so good. But allow me to be a massive hypocrite right now and just say, give this show a watch. You'll need to sit through the first 6-ish episodes, and they can be a bit of a bore, but the second half of the season is legitimately worth it. Just disregard the terrible name that makes no sense, since not a single character is named after Spice, and have a great time. Thanks for sitting through my review of the show, and please remember to like and subscribe, yada yada yada, basic YouTuber stuff. If you like the video, let me know, and I may do more in the future, and if you have an idea for what I can review in the future, video game, movie, TV show, anime, let me know, and maybe I'll even review it. If you suggest One Piece, no, Princely, I already told you I won't watch it. And if you suggest Naruto, also Princely, no, I told you I won't watch it. But yeah, and if you're looking for something to do after this, My Guardian Spice is free to watch on Crunchyroll, albeit with a million advertisements. Anyway, give me a follow over on Twitch. It's at Griffheim Steamroller. We stream all sorts of fun games over there and goof around all the time. And, yeah, I'll see you next time. Man, I really ended up enjoying High Guardian Spice, didn't I? The second half was really good, and the first half was really bad, and I forced myself to sit... Did I give myself Stockholm Syndrome with an anime? How the hell did I pull that one off?